What if you could totally rebuild your life right from the very foundation? Well, today we're diving into a really interesting spiritual philosophy called Lifechanyuan. It claims to have the blueprint for doing just that. We're talking transcendence and even a whole new take on resurrection. Okay, let's jump right in.
So this whole philosophy kicks off with a really simple, universal idea. Think about it. You can't turn raw iron into steel without some serious heat, right? And a seed isn't going to become a tree without soil and water. I mean, nothing, absolutely nothing changes without the right conditions. It's just a fundamental law of nature.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This philosophy takes that basic law and points it directly at the most complex thing imaginable, us, human consciousness. And it asks this huge question: what are the right conditions for you, for me, to truly transform?
All right, so if we're going to transform, what's the secret sauce? Well, according to this source material, it all boils down to this one core concept they call the life structure. And you can kind of think of it like an invisible blueprint, the underlying code that basically runs everything in your life. And they use this really cool analogy to explain it. Picture this. They say a person is just like a country. You know how a country's success or failure often depends on its system of government, its management structure? Well, it's the same idea for you. Your personal quality of life, how happy you are, how successful you are, it's all dictated by your own internal life structure. The outcome is a direct reflection of that inner system. So the takeaway here is pretty huge. If you want a better life, you can't just tweak the little things on the surface. You've got to change the fundamental blueprint. But what is this structure even made of? The source says it's almost entirely made of one single thing: your consciousness.
Okay, that's a big idea. If we need to rebuild our entire consciousness, what do we build it with? What's the raw material, the key ingredient for this massive change?
The answer they give is, well, it's surprisingly simple, but also really profound. It's love. And they argue that love isn't just some fuzzy emotion we feel. No, it's the literal, actual building block of a higher consciousness. The idea is, the more evolved a life form is, the higher the percentage of its very structure is made of pure love. And they give a pretty down-to-earth way to see this in action. Just think about a happy family versus an unhappy one. What's the real fundamental difference? The source says it almost always boils down to what they call the love content. One family is just overflowing with it, and the other is basically defined by the fact that it's missing.
And this is a really crucial point. This isn't just some abstract feel-good theory. It's a call to action, to practice. The path to a higher state, they say, is all about actively, consciously cultivating love every day. And what's really interesting is that the source says the process of doing it is way more important than any final result.
Okay, so now we get to the part where this philosophy really pushes the boundaries. To back all this up, the source dives into some truly wild claims about the power of the mind. It lays out a series of anecdotes that are meant to be evidence that our consciousness is way more powerful than most of us believe. So the central idea here is pretty radical, to be honest. It's proposing that your mind isn't just a side effect of your brain's wiring. Not at all. The source claims the mind is a totally separate, non-physical thing, a force that has absolute, total control over your physical brain and body. So, to kind of poke holes in the conventional wisdom that consciousness lives in the brain, the source brings up some really bizarre medical cases. We're talking about stories of a student with a high IQ who, it turns out, had almost no actual brain tissue. Or, get this, a claim that a severed head was able to communicate for hours. These are all presented as these strange anomalies that maybe, just maybe, hint that consciousness is something else entirely. Okay, this next one is one of the most striking examples they give. Apparently, in an experiment, a subject was made to believe that a burning hot coin was being pressed onto their arm, but here's the twist. The coin was only slightly warm. But because the person's mind was so convinced it was being burned, a real, actual third-degree burn scar supposedly appeared on their skin. The takeaway is just, wow, the mind's belief literally created a physical reality.
And here's another story they use to illustrate this mind over matter point. It's about two mice in a pool of water. The first mouse has its whiskers, so it can feel the edges of the pool. It believes there's a way out, so it keeps swimming and survives. But the second mouse, its whiskers have been cut. It can't sense any escape route. It decides the situation is totally hopeless, stops trying, and drowns.
And this story leads to a really powerful and, frankly, pretty stark concept that the source calls mental suicide. The argument is that the water didn't kill that second mouse.
Its own mind did. The second it believed the situation was completely hopeless, its consciousness, so the claim goes, made the decision to just shut the whole system.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly powerful mind, right? But how does that connect back to everything we talked about with love and changing your life structure? Well, that brings us to the grand finale, the central concept of this whole philosophy: resurrection. But hold on, this isn't resurrection like you've probably heard of it before. It's got nothing to do with a physical body coming back from the dead. Nope. Here, resurrection is all about consciousness. The source claims that we are all actually celestial beings who are just temporarily asleep here in the human realm. So resurrection, that's just the process of waking up.
So what's the trigger? What wakes us up? And this is where it all comes full circle, right back to that core ingredient, love. The idea is that a super powerful, focused energy of love can be sent out, kind of like a radio signal, and it resonates with these sleeping souls on Earth. And that resonance, it acts like a cosmic alarm clock, jarring them awake so their consciousness can finally go back home.
And that's what this whole philosophy builds to. This simple, urgent call to action. It's not just a nice quote. It's meant to be an active broadcast, a signal being sent out right now to try and reach anyone who's still asleep.
And so that leaves us with a really provocative question to chew on, doesn't it? This philosophy takes a goal that's common in a lot of spiritual paths, the idea of being awake, and just launches it into a whole other dimension. It really forces you to ask yourself, what does it really mean to be awake? And maybe, just maybe, what if, right now, this is all just a dream?